Conservation Commission requests for determination of applicability. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Notice is hereby given in the intent of Adele Mazzucco to determine if the proposed work associated at 19 Hartshorn Road, Walpole, falls under the jurisdiction of the Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Walpole Wetlands Bylaw. Plans on file with the Conservation Commission Office. Conservation Commission meeting will be held Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, December 11th, 2019 at 7 p.m. All interested person request to be present. Time is now 7 p.m. We have some comments from the board. This is from the town engineer. Engineering Department received the RDA dated 11/13 and 2 photographs showing partially installed driveway expansion provided in lieu of the site plan for the above noted duplex residential unit. We note the following: the driveway should conform to the town's regulation of 24 feet in width with a maximum with 3 feet returns. Mr. Mazzucco needs to apply for a curb cut permit with the engineering department. Permit will specify the item noted in comment 1. The edges of the driveway will need to be restored with loam and seed. In favor of the commission approving the request subject to what has been noted above. The Health Department, its November 19th meeting voted unanimously, have no specific concerns at this time. Board of Appeals. The proposed project is not for the zoning board of appeals, therefore has no comment at this time on the property reference. Okay, representing the applicant. Tell us what you are proposing to do.
Yeah, I'm just trying to finish my driveway to fill 2 cars, not 1.
Sir? Oh, yeah, I guess, go, yeah, to the podium with a microphone. We're on TV.
Hi, I'm just trying to do to make my driveway a little bit wider to get 2 cars, not 1 car. That's what I tried.
Okay. Landis?
So I was asked to go by and take a look at this site after I was notified that there was some activity being done. There's a little unmapped wetlands adjacent to the site, parallel to Norton Street, that takes drainage and runs it down Norton Street. And the gentleman here was expanding his driveway. So it doesn't appear that the actual driveway is going in a resource area. It's adjacent to the resource area. And when I went out there, there had been some gravel, and he sort of sketched out where he wanted to do it. My understanding, you're going to pave it? Going to pave it? You're going to pave
Yes.
it? Okay. That's it.
Okay. Doug, any questions,
I don't
comments?
have any questions.
Media? Roger? No. Betsy? Al?
Okay, since I live in the neighborhood for 52 years, I know that the water that is there comes from the wetland behind the Walpole Woodworkers, which is now under construction for condos. It runs through the wetland at the end of Hartshorn Road and beside my driveway. And under the parking lot that's beside this house. And then it crosses under the street on Hartshorn Road and passes through that lot, which the town now owns. And then the water goes under the parking lot for the machine shop and into a pipe system to Memorial Pond. When the storms get bad, the manhole cover on School Street pops up and floats and the water is spouting up like a fountain. Okay, so there's a considerable amount of water passes through this lot. There's water there now. There's water in the channel, the brook, intermittent stream beside my driveway. And this past summer, there was water almost every day. There are times when we have a dry season that this dries up. The concern being here that we don't encroach any closer than what he's looking at, because if we do, then that makes the matters worse on the end of Hartshorn Road. And not unusual for the water to flow over Hartshorn Road. In the wintertime, the water that wants to flow over Hartshorn Road becomes a real ice problem, and DPW spends considerable time there trying to keep it open, because that's a major pathway for cars to go to the church. And right now, it's a major pathway for cars and kids to go to the bus stop on School Street. In the morning, there are about 25 to 30 kids at that school bus stop there. So the concern is to make sure we don't encroach and fill up the storage space any more than it is. So if he stays within the bounds that is proposed in what I see, I don't see any problem, but if it goes further, there's a problem. I noticed that this gentleman is a new resident to the area, and previously it was a duplex with a owner that didn't live there. So he is doing a good job cleaning up. I notice he's put a fence up to, for whatever reason, he needs a fence around the property, and it looks nice. So I'm not in opposition to this project as long as it doesn't go any further than that.
Okay. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Okay. Someone want to make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 600. What do we?
So it would be, I believe it's a -3, so it is work within the buffer zone, but will not impact the wetlands. You understand you can't go any further than you already have positioned for the driveway, no other fill or
Yeah, just only
anything?
the 24, and the same what they get from the engineering, exactly. It's
Right.
gonna be 24 by 3 units, yeah.
And he did talk to engineering and get what he needed from the engineering department.
Okay, someone make that a motion, -3?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 600.
And one thing, like, whatever he said, everything's true. Like, it was happened last year. It was a lot of water coming to my driveway too. And it was the last February. It was like the water come above, coming icy, and was, well, a big accident happened in February. But I saw like a lot of people come from Walpole down to fix it. And when I asked the people working there, they says, across the street, like is another front of my house, there's another big wetland. It was blocked. That's why they make all water comes up. And since they fix it, we have a lot of rain last summer. We don't have any problems. That's why like they make like a good holes and make a drain until across the street for another lane, for the wetland. Since that's particular, we don't see any problems. Maybe in the storm, yeah, we saw like maybe the water a little bit comes, but since they fix it, everything's perfect. Like this summer was really perfect. Thanks, it was a really good job for the EPIW.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you're all set. We'll process what's called the negative determination and mail it out to your address.
Okay. I'm just the engineer was asking me like when I finish, just I will let them know to come to check it out. Maybe I will wait until the weather's coming. Maybe I don't know, like maybe in the spring or something.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
chunk of land there.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
High Oaks.
Somebody had
I
it
don't know
done.
whose that is. Is that yours, Richard? It's yours?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I wonder what they find.
Thank you.
Do we start or not? What do you think? It's 7:15.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess you have a few minutes before 7:15.
All right, while we're waiting, someone want to move the minutes from November 13th?
I'll move them.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, wait a minute.
Minutes you're doing?
Yeah.
I found one thing that you might want to correct, it's probably considered trivial, but the report of the square footage for the first item, it has 65 feet by 260 feet, and then it's got the unit square feet. So I think either you want to list that as 16,900 square feet, or change the units to feet times feet.
Where are you, Doug?
First paragraph, what?
The first item, notice of intent, land disturbance. It's this
Oh, okay.
second sentence, I
Yeah.
guess.
65 by 260, that's the, should be feet,
Linear
not square feet, yeah.
Or you could convert it, if you want square feet, it comes to 16,900, but,
But the 65 by 260
Is
is feet
yeah.
instead of square feet, so that should be FT
Or it's going into another dimension.
instead of SF, okay?
Twilight Zone.
Okay, subject to correction. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 600. Good, thank you. Town of Walpole Conservation Commission abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. According to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Walpole Wetlands Bylaw. Notice hereby given by High Oaks LLC for the filing of an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. Review the wetland resource area located off Delaney and Dover Drive, maps 11 and 12, parcels 49 and 84. Plans are filed at the Conservation Commission office. Public hearing on the above matter will be held at Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, December 11th, 2019, beginning at 7:15 p.m. All interested persons requested present. Time is now 7:15. Comments from the planning board. Receipt of your request for comments in the above referenced application. There are no planning comments at this time. Thank you for the opportunity. Okay. The finance department, everything's okay. Board of Health at its November 19th meeting voted unanimously they have no specific concerns at this time. This is from the town engineer. assistant town engineer and I have reviewed the submitted information and find the application to be generally thorough and well done. We offer the following comments. Application plans and reports are inconsistent as to who the applicant is. WPA 4A lists Maureen Jordan, High Oaks LLC, 526 Old Post Road, North Attleboro. The ANRAD transmittal lists Thomas Walsh, same address. The full-size plans list High Oaks LLC, 82 North Avenue, Attleboro, Mass. There should be consistency throughout the application. Plan does not show existing sewer infrastructure from Heritage Drive to Sunny Rock Drive and from number 488 High Street to Dover Drive. Although it is not critical to the ANRAD, we feel it may be misleading not to display the infrastructure and easements on the plan. We have attached reduced size copies of plans showing these items for reference. The graphic showing prioritized habitat attached to the ecotech and report is difficult to read and understand where the locus is. Commission may wish to have this clarified during the hearing. For Landis, this is not a requirement for an ANRAD. Let's see, we have attached a reduced size version of the earlier preliminary subdivision plan showing wetlands delineated at that time for the commission reference. We have not reviewed the wetland location in the field as it will be reviewed by the agent. Okay. So, okay, I guess that's it. Representing the applicant,
Rob Truax of GLM Engineering Consultants. So, just to give you a brief overview, this is an ANRAD, so we're just looking to get the wetland line fixed. It's about a 24-5 acre site up in Walpole. As you can see, it's surrounded by Delaney Drive, Dover Drive, there's access off Sunny Rock, there's access off High Street. There's actually access off Heritage Drive. I can't think of the name of that stub, but that's actually a paved access. Tonight, we'd just like to ask for a continuance at this time because Landis has not had a chance to go out and review the line with Ecotech. As you know, we've had some weather issues over the last week and a half. So, other than that, there's really not much to talk about. We've been in front of the planning board with this parcel for a preliminary plan last week. They closed it and made a decision. So we did have a preliminary plan. I don't know if you folks had the opportunity to look at that and comment to the board, but just for your info, they don't send it out, huh?
They don't.
Yeah, so it's a 15-lot subdivision of a preliminary plan that would be going in there, and there'd be 4 access points, all 4 would be cul-de-sacs. There was an extension of Sunny Rock for a couple lots. There was an extension coming in off High Street for a couple lots, and then Dover Road gets extended, and then this small stub road got extended in as well. So the total of, in the 20, it was 15 lots over 20-something acres of land. So unfortunately, I don't know why they don't send that out to all the boards for review. It did get reviewed by the engineering department. I've seen, the assistant engineer's comments, but there were other comments to the planning board as well. So we have spoken with the engineering department too, because we will be going into a definitive plan this winter.
okay. Landis?
I did request through Kate Delaney if we could get the preliminary
I'll send it to
subdivision
you.
plans ahead of time because I think it would be helpful with your preliminary design.
If you want, I'll send you a PDF of the thing, what I submitted, so you can take a look at it and make
Yeah,
comments.
yeah, I mean, Kate has it, so I have seen it. Seems like you have good access to all the upland areas without having to fill in any wetlands, so that would be a comment.
Well, actually, we don't. If we come in off Sunny Rock, there would be some filling. If
You
look
don't
at
have to come out,
Yeah.
coming out from Sunny
Well, there-
Rock.
You know, the comment from the planning board, just to let you know, is Sunny Rock is 722 feet in length from Buckboard. They only allow a dead-end street up to 750. So they were pretty adamant in the hearing that they said they would not be in favor of granting a waiver to extend that.
Right, and I'd also say, if you can access your upland portions of your property, you don't need to fill in wetlands.
So we're looking at other options for that. But if you know, if you want to make comments to me before, you know, anytime on that preliminary, I'd love to hear them, because I'll just incorporate them in the definitive.
Right.
Is there room off of this little unnamed stub?
Which one?
The one that.
No, you're not gonna come in up there. You'll fill
Okay, so then-
wetlands there too.
Right, so you only have 2 accesses.
Well, actually,
Oh,
this
oh,
one,
3, sorry,
we have
yes.
one here, one here, one here. This one showed a cul-de-sac up in this area, and you could actually do a cul-de-sac here and gain access to.
That's what I was thought, you could do like
There
a
are
Y, so
other
there's.
options. We took the simple route, we simplified it, and we just, so that'll get revised most likely.
So I haven't been able to go out there, we tried, but there were, between the snow and rain and everything
We had like a
else.
2-hour window the other day.
Yeah, there was a 2-hour window, which someone else ended up getting. Actually, they got a 3.5-hour window from me. So we'll try and come, this coming week. I think the weather's just to be improved some, so I can go out and take a look. I did ask Rob to come anyways, because I know we had several people that came into our office or called, and just in case they came to the meeting, if they had some information that would be pertinent to the wetlands issues that they wanted to voice. I thought it was best for Rob just to come tonight, and
We did have people at the preliminary, even though they don't get notified for that, people were there. We had some neighbors there for that.
Okay. Doug, any questions or comments right now?
On the locust map, is that a stream or an intermittent stream that I see there?
Through the site,
Yeah.
there's no stream bed through there, no. There's one down in the far corner here, but there's nothing up, I've walked through there several times, there's no bed. I think that's just a wetland it's showing in that locus.
there is flow that goes from that wetlands, which you're not showing through the parcel off Delaney Street.
Where were we talking about? Up here or up that
No,
way?
follow the big wetlands
This
all the way down
comes down.
to that parcel.
So what happens is right down in here, they built a grass swale between the houses, if you recall the subject.
Because there's drainage.
And then there's a big head wall here for an inlet, for this water to come down and
Yep.
flow through here and get to that point.
Yeah,
If you recall that subdivision when it went in, Al and Jack.
I
probably
do, and I
remember.
recall being out there for an enforcement issue and walking up onto this
Oh,
property.
Into that area?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's right down, so there's a house here, so I think it's like right down this block line, somewhere in here.
In between the two houses, but I
Yeah,
think
we'll
it's
show
on
that.
the,
When we show the
right-hand
detail of the
side.
subdivision, that'll show up.
Anything else? Video?
Right now.
Roger?
Not at this time.
Okay, Betsy?
No.
Al?
I'll wait until we know more about the wetland line.
Okay. Just one comment, which isn't necessarily a conservation issue, but it does come up when we get to looping water lines and sewer lines, that then it does involve conservation. There it has, depending on where you're going. You got all cul-de-sacs. Has there been any thought as far as
There's been
looping
comment.
these roads?
I wouldn't loop the roads, probably. Well, you're not gonna loop from here to there, obviously.
Right.
And this really wouldn't loop well. I mean, it ends here and it ends there. There was a comment about looping water lines. There is sewer going through the property. There's sewer stubs on Dover and Delaney that are already branched into the site, from back when they built it. There is a sewer line that I don't show that comes down from Heritage, comes down through here, and then comes down Sunny Rock. You'll see that on the more detailed plans when we come back with a definitive, but so there's sewer coming through the property here. I don't know if it comes here, I think it comes over here more, it comes down like that. And then this is all stubbed in with sewer and water, this is all stubbed with sewer and water. This does not have any water stubs in it. I I don't know if that was ever planned to be built like that. It's a wide right-of-way, wider
Just
than what's
Bringing it
required.
up that if you, it seems to be desirable to loop the water and sewer lines, that if that's gonna involve any wetland issues, that you should
Yeah, we'll
start
show that.
addressing it now instead of later.
I don't think, we wouldn't loop the sewer line, we'd loop the water line.
Well, connection to keep it, you know, we
Yeah.
have,
I have, for the sewer, I don't have any issues getting in with, I don't have to go through any wetlands to get to any of the sewer lines.
okay,
Looping the water, most likely the same. Even if I was to loop, like say I did bring a loop down to Sunny Rock, I wouldn't have to go through that wetland to get over there. I could bring it down next to it, I'd be close, but I wouldn't be in it.
just
And
wanted to
then,
bring it
you
up.
know, the High
that,
Street one, if we do a loop from Dover to High Street, there's no wetland filling to get that one up there.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were planning to get up to Heritage and
I don't
connect
know that we'll get over to Heritage with the water.
Say that again?
We probably won't get the loop out to Heritage with the water.
Okay, I just, if that does come up from water and sewer, that you address it now rather than later.
I don't have any easements over there, other than this sewer easement. And that road stub, I mean, you could get up to that road stub with a water line, I guess. If you, it's a long way away from the cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
Easier, it'd be quicker to go back out the cul-de-sac.
Point is, I think that this comes up often, that particularly the water department likes to have that, and we have accommodated that on other projects, so,
We'll keep that in mind.
okay. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Yes, please identify yourself for the record.
Yeah, my name's Paul Prada, and I live on 42 Duane Drive.
Okay.
You guys, want to step here? Or-
Why don't you come up to the microphone, just so it gets on?
So,
We have a large audience.
yeah, I don't understand how the process works, although we weren't notified, and I know you don't have to for the preliminary hearing. I do have a drawing of it, so I don't know if that's accurate or not. But, so I live on 43 Delaney Drive, and the back of my yard will abut what they have as Lot 1 on this drawing. I can't really tell from the drawing here. So I have this would be Lot 1, but I live right here at the corner.
Oh, on the corner.
Right.
Dover and.
Yeah, in Delaney. So the thing is, it has a cul-de-sac here. I kind of like the cul-de-sac, because we'd prefer not to have a cross-through there. The only thing I wanted to note was when the GLM Engineering, I think it was, tagged the land, they were tagging my land as well. So my land has registered and unregistered land. The unregistered side is the woods that goes into the land. I have since had a surveyor come out. They have marked my land, so I just want to make sure that none of my trees or my land is touched by the new changes that will come. That's all that's my main purpose to come here today.
Okay, I think when that, this is just to define the wetlands. It is
Yeah, I
not-
just didn't think that they would define it on my land.
Yeah, I think if you just keep in touch with what's going on, then you'll know what this, but this particular filing is just for identification of the wetlands, which may actually extend into your property. I'm not sure where your property extends here, but he's over, so I don't know where his property, where
Yeah,
his property
so-
line is. But then that, more than likely, that wetland may extend into that parcel that you showed.
Yeah, just so that you know, I
facing
think the
Delaney
tagging
Drive.
is like pink and blue. Blue would indicate the wetlands, from what I understand. or
Right, and just
orange.
because there's flags, it doesn't mean there's gonna be anything happening on your on your property. Sometimes wetlands people, they're just looking at the trees and they don't know where the lot lines are, so sometimes they go on private property.
a wetland, we're definitely not cutting it down.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's fine. I think the areas that are my land is not wetland, except for the very, very tip of it. It's just that, I understand that. I just thought, even though they're tagging, I would think that they wouldn't tag my land, but it's fine.
They don't know where the property line is when you're out in the woods usually.
Yeah, so it's been clearly marked. I've had the surveyor, it's
Okay.
clearly marked now, so.
Okay.
You'll see my land, it goes up diagonally into the woods, so I just wanted to note that. That's all I care
Yeah,
about.
I think,
I actually like the cul-de-sac.
and I think you would be, as an abutter, you would be notified when something there's any plan for filing,
Okay.
so,
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Alan Miller, Heritage.
You
So what's
want-
the timing for this
You want to come over
project?
to the microphone, please?
Yeah, Alan Miller, Heritage. What is the timing for this project, for the development of it?
I don't know 100%, but what I do know is we filed a preliminary and have text zoning for 7 months, so generally we follow up with definitive within that timeframe.
So it's this coming spring or summer is when you'd like to start construction?
Probably won't be permanent by spring. It might be permanent by summer.
So what's the, if I understand it correctly, nothing's been approved yet, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so what's the process to get this approved?
This is an application to determine the wetland line. It's just strictly the wetland. It's not, has nothing to do with the subdivision. Once the owner knows that the wetland line has been approved, he can then proceed with his plans for a subdivision, knowing where the wetland lines are.
And so that would be, so if I have a subdivision going along, I would have, as part of the lot, the wetland. Is that the way it would work?
There would be,
Explain that they would come before us again with the
that
subdivision
they'd have to
plan.
be another filing for the subdivision. This filing is strictly to identify the location of the wetlands. There's no construction involved with this. But
And if I wanted to follow up, get in more detail, I just get in touch with you?
You can. The way the process works, this is the very beginning of the process. So we're just trying to identify the resource areas so we know what we have to work with. Once we identify this, we've already done all the survey, the topographic survey and all that, the land court surveys, all the survey property lines have been done. Once that's done, these folks give us the name, then we know where the wetlands are, that's defined. Now we can go forward with the subdivision. So the next step would be, we will file a definitive subdivision with the planning board. We'll also, I can't imagine we're not gonna be enough for buffer, so we'll be filing a notice of intent with this commission. So you'll get 2 notices. You're gonna get a notice for the planning board hearing, and you'll get a notice for the conservation hearing when it comes out.
Okay,
So you'll get notice again.
okay.
You get noticed on this one, correct?
I did on this one, yes.
You'll get notified.
From the engineering for the other hearing you were talking about,
Yeah.
I don't think I got
They
notice
don't
on that.
notice for that. That's just a discussion. They don't
Right.
notice. I wish they would. I think they should. I think they should bring out, that's what preliminary is for, to flush out any problems
All right.
early in the game.
But again, I could follow up with you if I have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
anyone else? Good. Okay, continue to when? What's your timeframe?
You got the holidays, you're not, it's
We have
January.
one meeting in December, which is.
No, our next meeting is
Oh,
January 8th.
January, we are in
I
December.
didn't think you were meeting again this,
No, okay, our next meeting,
December 25th?
yeah,
Our
dress,
next meeting is
dress
January 8th.
properly.
Bring a present.
Bring some presents.
January 8th.
Under $50.
January 8th.
January 8th, does that work for you?
Sure.
Okay, January 8th, we have a 7:05, so 7:15, will it work?
Sure.
Yeah.
So-
7:15 on January 8th. Someone make that a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion, all in favor? Aye, opposed, abstained, 600. Okay,
Okay,
thanks.
thank you.
My notes.
Thank you.
This one,
Let me just double check.
Wall Street, Lot 6.
Yeah, 11, yeah.
Time, 7:30.
Why did they put the TV guy in another room? It's like he's in another country
Yeah.
now.
No, I didn't put it, it used to be over here in the corner. I don't know if that's,
You never know.
what do we got
Because if they
here?
closed the divider.
Town of Walpole notice of intent Conservation Commission public hearing in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Whatever that is. Notice hereby given the intent of Wall Street Development Corp. For the construction of single-family house, 11 Boyden Lane, Lot 6, in Walpole. Plans are filed with the Conservation Commission office. Public hearing on the above matter will be held in Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, room 112, December 11th, 2019, beginning at 7:30 PM. All interested persons requested to be present. Time is now 7:37. Let's see what we have here for the record. What is this? Okay, the Finance Department, we have some issues. Are you aware of this?
I can't hear you.
The Finance Department?
Oh, yeah, we're aware of that. It's being taken care of.
So, you're aware of nothing will be done until that's cleared up?
I think that's being paid on Friday.
Okay. Is that the fine?
No.
Something else? Okay. What else we got here? This is from the Engineering Department. They offered the following comments. We feel the lot would be better served if the driveway were located on the north side of the site. This would likely require moving the fire hydrant, but would reduce off-grading as well as reduce the proposed driveway slope, the current 13% to approximately 3%. We suggest the roof infiltration systems be installed with overflow pipes to daylight instead of proposed overflow and splash block at the house. We have not reviewed the wetland location or the conclusion of the Ecotech report and will defer to the agent and commission as this is not our area of expertise. We agree that the current lot grading, subject to our driveway comment, is desirable and provides for an adequate backyard. Nevertheless, we defer to the commission and agent on prioritizing the intent of the Wetlands Protection Act on the local bylaw. You aware of these comments?
Yes,
Yes, okay. Go ahead.
Good evening. Lou Petrosi for Wall Street Development Corp. We were here a month or so ago, and we discussed the request to obtain a variance from the 25-foot no alteration zone that's in your regulations. What we're proposing to do is, originally, the commission issued an order of condition for this, location of this house on this lot, which showing the existing wetlands at that time, and maintaining a 25-foot buffer around the entire wetland. What that does is it push the house so far back on the lot that it's really kind of on a slope. You all know from previous construction, it's a very hilly, very downslope location. We're trying to move property onto a flatter area of the lot. So we did two things. One is we had the wetland line reflagged since it was done 3.5 years ago. And it was determined by Ecotech, our environmental consultant, that the wetland had shrunk a little bit at the northerly corner point of the wetland. And which allowed the 25-foot buffer to be moved back down a little bit as well. But the way this wetland is currently shaped as a point, as a finger-like projection, it kind of penalizes the rest of the lot because we maintain a 25-foot buffer on either side, but the point of it pushes us back on the lot. And the way the regulation is written, I don't think it was intended to deal with the point of a wetland because it's worded that it's parallel to a wetland line, which would be on these sides, and it doesn't really have an implication for a pointed wetland. So what we're proposing is, this is the proposed plan, we're proposing to alter approximately 1,200 square feet of the 25-foot alteration zone, no alteration zone. And in lieu of that, we're proposing a clearly marked dry stone wall along, instead of your bounds, a clearly marked stone wall along a 10-foot no disturbance area with enhanced buffer plantings to enhance the buffer area. I don't know if you recall during the previous, when we were getting the subdivision approved, there was always some question regarding this particular wetland. We were all wondering where it went. The water goes underneath our road from a culvert, and then it just dies away into the ground, just goes away. So there's no continuation, as one might expect, down the slope. It just dissipates into the ground. So we'd like to request the commission allow us to alter this area at the point of the wetland. Essentially, the house gets moved up approximately 20 to 25 feet from its current location. So it gets us away from the back of the slope of the property and allows us to create a flatter backyard and a more level backyard than was previously contemplated.
Okay. Landis?
So first of all, I haven't gone out to re-review the wetlands line due to the weather. And so the first notice of intent expires in March, where the commission reviewed and approved your house lot and wetlands line. Correct?
I have a question.
Roughly.
The wetland line you're showing here is the revised one?
Yeah, the revised line is what
Okay,
we have.
all right, just so everybody's clear on that.
And the top one is
The
the
top
original.
one is the original. This is the revised.
So we have this top one.
We don't have that top one.
So the way the order of conditions is written is that the order of condition is issued and it's good for 3 years, and the line is good for 3 years. So I don't see how the commission can re-review and issue another order of conditions changing a line until that 3 years is up.
Do you want a response?
So, and I'm sure you disagree with my opinion.
Well, I've reviewed the DEP's policy regarding amended orders, and at the suggestion of the commission, I filed a new notice of intent. I could have filed for an amended order of conditions under the original order, which would have allowed the commission to act as under the original order of conditions, you just simply amend it. It's under policy, DEP policy.
Amend the resource area?
No, amending an order of conditions, which whatever that involves.
Again, I disagree. The wetlands line is good for 3 years. It goes both ways. You can't change it, we can't change it. It's good for 3 years. So I don't think it applies to both
Well,
applicant and the commission.
I didn't come here to argue the
Okay,
legalities.
well, that's my opinion to the commission, that you should wait till the order expires if you want to change the wetlands line itself.
Well, you know, we've been struggling with this subdivision for quite some time. We're anxious to move it ahead. We've,
Okay, I think, can I just finish my comments, Chair, and then you
I
can
thought you
address?
were
Or
Yeah,
we
you
can
have
move on
more
to the other
time.
commissioners and then perhaps have this discussion afterwards. So that's what I would recommend to the commission, that it shouldn't be re-reviewed until the old order has expired. That would be the appropriate way to handle it. Two, there should be reasons as to why the no alteration area is being, why he's asking for a waiver. And three, Wall Street Development, Luke Petrosi does owe fines to the town. So under the bylaw, well, we can hold the hearing, but generally the commission holds the permit until the fines are paid.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Doug, any comments, questions?
Not at this time.
Video?
Well, regardless of whether you change the wetland line or not, I don't think you make a compelling argument about the 25-foot no alteration changing or going into that area, so I don't buy your argument.
Roger?
I think we're lacking a few bit of information. It's just difficult for me to rationalize from the distance we have to look at on that map there as compared to the way this map is set up here. I think I know pretty much what you're planning to do or what you're requesting. I wonder if Landis has been out there to check the wetland?
No, I have not had a chance to do
Hadn't
that.
had a chance to do that yet.
Well, I would like to get a report from Landis as to what she finds in regards to what is requested here. That's some of my comments.
Okay. Betsy?
So one thing that I often say as a commissioner when I see a subdivision like this, and I know I said it for this particular subdivision whenever it came before us originally, I don't like someone's front yard being filled with a wetland, and I don't like someone's backyard sloping straight down into something else. And I've heard developers say, I don't know if you said this, Lou, but maybe other, people don't use their yards anymore, they're in the house playing video games. And it's also not my place as a commissioner to comment on people's yards. So I say it, but there's nothing that can come of it. So you as a developer, from the get-go, I think, shouldn't be planning people's yards and houses that are not going to be viable. And it's not our job as protectors of wetlands to then adjust things around what I think is a poor plan. Who wants a wetland in their front yard and a sloping backyard? I don't like it. I'll say it again and again as a commissioner, and then Landis will say, well, that's not your business. No, you won't say it that way, but it isn't my business, right? But I don't think it's also our business to adjust things around a poor plan. So I'm not in favor of doing that.
Anything else?
No.
That's it. Al?
I look at this 25-foot buffer that you want to disturb, and I'm concerned about the stone wall that you're proposing, and I'm concerned about the planting that you're proposing. The stone wall, I suppose if it were done by a good landscape architect, it could be an attractive feature in the front yard. But your plan doesn't show me enough to show whether it's just a row of stones just arbitrarily placed there, or whether it's really a stone wall that's going to hold up the front lawn at a particular elevation that's may be desirable to go with the house, and how that affects the drainage into the wetland. I would not be in favor of just putting a row of stones at the location that you show without knowing more about it. And it certainly doesn't show me on this plan what the front yard, how that's going to be landscaped and how that's going to affect the wetland here on the site. So at this point, I pretty much agree with Landis that we have an order of conditions in effect. And my suggestion is you wait until that expires and look at this again and see where this stone wall really belongs and what its elevations are going to be and how it fits into the picture of protecting the wetland and how it fits into the picture of providing the front lawn that this homeowner probably will want. So there's a little more consideration has to be given to this. When I look at the wetland regulations, I don't see anything that says a wetland has to be an ugly place. I know in some places, some towns, some parts of the country, wetlands are featured as a desirable piece of landscaping. We have abutting towns and towns not far away that have wetlands that provide a place for somebody to sit and watch Mother Nature do its thing. We don't seem to do much of that here. Maybe we should, but if we're going to have a wetland in somebody's front yard, it should be something that's decent to look at, not only for the homeowner, but for the neighborhood. So I think we need a little more information here in order to convince me to allow using this 25-foot buffer that you want to disturb and turn into front lawn. So I want more information on that. And as I say, it probably could be done and designed in a desirable way that would convince people that it's okay. Because there are uses for buffer zone. Buffer zone to wetlands provide valuable habitat, and we need valuable habitat. We need to maintain it, and there's nothing that says that some of this front yard there couldn't be much better than just a barren front lawn. So I think we need to look at that part of the issue.
Anything else, Al?
That's all
Okay.
at this
I
time.
think the latest original comment regarding the existing wetland line is pertinent, and that if there is some revision to what was the original wetland line, then that would come about as a result of the field work So it may or may not conform to what you have here between your revised wetland line and the original wetland line, which would then have some bearing on what your plan would be. Have you given any, are you planning to give any consideration to the engineer's comment with regard to the location of the driveway?
No, I think that would be, the moving of the hydrant and other work that's being there. This is, kind of a steep slope there. We think there's some ledge in that area. So, we're not gonna explore that opportunity at all.
Okay, just if you were, that you need to consider that as well. So I think it would be appropriate to continue this until March 20.
Oh, no, I'm not gonna wait till March. I'll continue it till January 8th.
Okay, if, I think, your choice, but you would be potentially looking for a denial
Well,
if
there's
that's.
two issues here. One under the Wetlands Protection Act, which is what Landis is probably referring to, and then there's a bylaw issue relative to the 25-foot no alteration policy that you have. So if we're gonna argue over those two things, we might as well start arguing sooner rather than later. I agree with Al that there could be some additional information that we could provide that would enhance the area that we've talked about. But the commission and their regulations clearly say that a variation can be requested. They don't have any guidelines in their regulations to guide an applicant on what types of variations would be acceptable. We're sort of like shooting in the dark until we find something that is appealing. So whether or not that is a matter that we seek a remedy to, we'll have to decide in January.
Okay, I think if there is any consideration for encroachment in the 25-foot no disturb area, that there is some compensation or something that enhancement to the project that the commission would have to consider. So that's, again, I don't know what, I don't see anything in here that you offered any enhancements. So
Well,
that's
I'm not
something
sure
to-
what enhancements, that you don't identify what you consider to be adequate enhancements
I
for
don't know what
encroaching.
you've got on the site to be able to take a look at the site and see what you can do.
Mr. Chairman, I'll give you an example, reverse example. So when you alter a wetland, you're allowed to replicate the wetland 1.5 times to 1. So we all understand that a wetland is worth more than the actual buffer zone. We agree on that?
Not
So we-
necessarily.
We should be able to provide a replication of either a wetland or a buffer zone equal to the alteration that we're proposing.
That's what I just said, that you
Yeah.
need to come up with some, something that compensates for the work in the 25-foot no disturb area.
If we were to propose something along those lines, is that going to be fair enough compensation for the alteration that we're gonna be
We'd
proposing?
have to see what you're offering. So-
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Okay, can I also add that I think that the 25-foot no alteration areas is, has a relationship with the wetlands. It's there to create a buffer zone, so there's no incremental alteration of the wetlands. It's there to provide habitat protection. It's there to provide pollution prevention. It helps filter out any chemicals that may be put on a lawn, herbicides or fertilizers. Those things I believe are listed in our regulations. So I think what you have to show the commission is that a shorter, smaller 25-foot no alteration area is still going to provide the protection and the benefit to the wetlands.
Understood.
So I'm not, I'm not sure if this plan does. It is a residential household where you do have the wetlands right in the front yard, and the common practice is to that wetlands becomes smaller and smaller, often, sometimes, not all the times. So that's why the 25-foot no alteration area is there. So I think one of the things you have to show the commission is what you're doing to stop that incremental, potential incremental damage to the wetlands, that you're protecting it against herbicides and fertilizers or anything that the homeowner may use on their lawn, and as a pollution buffer, all the things that are listed out in the regulations.
Well, under the current order, I mean, we still have those same risks, and we've provided nothing in terms of protection along those lines, other than not using chemicals or things on the lawn that might be in the order. What we're proposing under this scenario has significant other protections that compensate for we're not using the whole 25-foot alteration, we're only using 15 feet of it. So it's not like we're taking the whole 25 foot and going right up to the wetlands. We're using approximately 15 feet of it. We're providing some protections. Now, perhaps we need to provide more protections, and maybe there are other things that we can incorporate to do that, but the current proposal, the current order doesn't have any of those protections in it. So I'm trying to help this process along here and see if we can come up with a compromise that helps us do a better job on the lot and still maintains the objectives of the wetland regulations that you have to protect the resource area. So,
Yeah, we'll wait to see what your
okay. So we'll continue to
revised,
January
and we'll
8th.
see what the field observation is with regard to the location of the wetland. Yeah, Doug?
I do have a question. I've been studying these elevation lines here and noting that the wetlands are actually 7 feet above the cellar floor. I assume CF 243 is the cellar floor. So I'm wondering, is this wall trying to, I'm trying to figure out where the water flows out of the wetlands. Is the wall an attempt to divert the water?
No, the
away from
water
house?
just disappears into the ground.
Okay, but the
The wall is the
the
real.
cellar floor is below the wetlands, elevation-wise, right?
Yes, this was discussed at the last public
Okay.
hearing as well.
The wall is there to protect future encroachment into the wetlands, to create a clear demarcation between front yard
Okay.
and non-front yard wetland. So, under your current regulations, under the current order, we're only posting stone bounds that, quite honestly, won't really discourage anybody from going in that area, but a stone wall would clearly mark that out to do that.
Okay.
But we can certainly provide more details relative to the type of wall that we would propose, and certainly some of the issues that Landis has brought up, we can try to incorporate some of those measures as well. But I think what we're trying to do is make an approved plan, a better plan, based on what we know now about the site and the conditions out there.
Are you
And
thinking the basement's gonna be wet?
That was my impression. The wetlands are elevated above the house and 7 feet above the basement, so water likes to flow downhill. Gravity.
So is the basement gonna be wet?
We don't build houses with wet basements.
I remember, we talked about this during the first public hearing, so, talked
So
about that. Where
when-
does the water go? It goes
wanna-
down,
It disappears. Would you like to schedule
It
a
doesn't
time?
disappear, it's still there, it's just, it flows below ground.
It goes,
It doesn't disappear, it's there, yes. So,
So-
Chairman, am I hearing you correctly? You want me to spend my time and the town's resources on going out there and reviewing this wetlands line, that we already have an approved wetlands line?
I think we should
And the
vote
order
on that. I
either,
think we should vote on it.
either way, it would need to be done.
I would like to vote on whether Landis runs out and does it right now, or whether it, so let's make
We
a
have a
decision as
new,
a commission.
we have a new, this is filing, which, with its appropriate fees, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I think it's something that be done one way or the other, one time or another.
When
so-
it expires, right?
Then that's another issue when we get to, if we, based on what is presented at the next hearing, on what our decision would be. Couple of issues. One is the wetland line. Can we accept the revised wetland line in view of the fact that it has been determined and is in force for 3 years? That 3-year period is over in March. We've got the issue of whether that subject wetland line as proposed here is even valid, and also the encroachment on the 20-foot, 5-foot no disturbance. There's several issues to be resolved. I think it is, at one time or another, we're gonna have to resolve the issue with the wetland line. So I don't see any problem in resolving that issue now. The other issue is, as far as timing goes, we can decide at the next hearing. Is that, anybody have problems with that?
As long as it,
Emilio?
As Landis said, I think he has a valid wetland line until March, so that's it. And I'm not in favor of encroaching into the 25-foot to accommodate a house just because they want a level backyard. So that's my position on those two issues. So I'm gonna vote that way now, tomorrow, next week, next month. So you can bring it back if you want, but that's the way I'm gonna vote. So that's it.
and I also don't want Landis running out right now between now and February, to check this wetland when we've got all kinds of projects that she needs to see de novo. Things that we had to table tonight because she didn't get a chance to look what we just looked at an hour ago. So to me, she's got her priorities.
If the chairman thinks that it should be reviewed for the next meeting, then like all other projects, I'll do it as soon as possible. And also it depends on the weather. I mean, it's not a great time to be re-reviewing wetlands lines regardless of when it was delineated the first time, especially since the area's been very manipulated as well. It's pretty much manipulated all around the whole area. So, you know, if the chairman wants more information next hearing, then we'll get more information next hearing. That's all we can say at this
So
point.
you're gonna not review the wetland line, wait till it snows again, and then
No.
tell me that you can't review the wetland line because there's
No.
snow on the ground? Is that
What
right?
I
No,
just
that
said
wasn't-
is
that
like
was
any
what we said.
project that we're working on, I will make myself available as best I can based on the weather and the time of year it is to review the wetlands line.
Right, and
But
how-
I am saying it's not a good time of year to review a wetlands line, especially one that's been very manipulated, the buffer zone has been manipulated. So but I will find the time.
And I'll say that High Oaks is in line in front of
Well,
this.
yeah, I'll
There's-
figure out the
there's-
timing. Let me clarify that.
Okay, well, I'll,
If the ground is frozen and you can't look at the soils and all the vegetation has been manipulated, then you can't
Landis,
review it, so.
whenever you have the
Just like any
time,
project.
whenever you have the time, if you feel like you wanna go out there and look at it, I'd appreciate if you give us a call.
Well,
So that
what
we
should
have our
happen is
environmental
when
guide.
an applicant submits an application for a review of the wetlands, that they call me, or the botanist calls me, and we make an appointment to go out and review the wetlands line. That's generally how it works. Doesn't always work that way. I often have to call the applicant, but I
Okay,
will
well,
do
I
that as
submit-
well.
I submitted the notice of intent a few weeks ago with the environmental report from our Ecotech, and he hasn't received any phone call to go out and
And
review the wetland.
Ecotech should have called
Okay,
to say,
so-
come out and take a look at the wetlands line. And
Okay.
I would have been, you know, if the weather conditions were right, I would have gone out.
You decide, Landis, if you wanna go out and accommodate
The
this.
applicant that has to provide the
Have 'em
commission,
call.
the information to the commission. That's how it works. The applicant provides the information to the commission.
Okay, and
That's how it works.
and have I not done that, or no? This
Have 'em-
notice of intent doesn't cover that?
Have Ecotech call. If Ecotech is doing the work for you, have them call. Okay. And you have heard other comments, so
Well,
take those as,
I've heard the comments, I understand the protection of this policy that you have.
It's not a policy, it's our regulations.
Well, it's, listen, if you read your regulations, clearly says it's a policy, not a regulation. So, I don't wanna discuss the semantics of what would go on after this, but I'm trying to find a happy medium that you folks can be happy with. If you're not interested, there's other ways to achieve the results. So if the chairman's willing to continue this to January 8th, I'll do some revisions to the plan, and we'll see if we can identify some enhancements that would allow the encroachment into the 25-foot no disturbance zone.
okay. January 8th, 7:30.
Sure.
Okay, someone make that a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 600.
Thank you.
Town of Walpole Conservation Commission abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, Town of Walpole Wetlands Bylaw. Those are given by 55 BH LLC for filing of an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation to review the wetland resource area located at 55 Summer Street, map 52, lot 78. Walpole. Plans are filed with the Conservation Commission Office. Public hearing on the above matter will be held in Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, December 11th, 2019, beginning at 7:45 PM. All interested persons request to be present. Time is now at 8:16. Let's see what we have here. Anything for the record?
I'm Brian
Just
Butler.
wait, just wait a minute. You can give those to her. It's gonna be the comments first.
Comments from the other boards. Board of Water and Sewer Commissions will not meet again until December 16th, therefore comments Any above matter will not be available till after that date. Planning Board, we received your requests or comments. However, there are no planning comments at this time. This needs to be signed. This is from the engineering department.
Okay, so, oh, this is like, yeah.
Reviewed the submitted information and then filed with others. The application appears to be complete with all graphic, legible and supporting documents in order. Technical review for wetlands to others. We have several comments pertaining to the form of the plan submission. Plan should be stamped by a Massachusetts registered land surveyor, not by a professional engineer. Sheet C1 general notes should also list land court certificate of title number 201454 as 2 of the 3 locus parcels are registered land. The owner applicant appears to be incorrectly noted on sheet C1 as 55 SS LLC, however, it should be 55 BH LLC. Although not part of the locus for this application, property perimeter shown appears to not include an unconstructed subdivision roadway, as well as assessor's map 51, parcel 53-55. We have not reviewed the wetland location in the field reviewed by the agent. Okay, so representing the applicant,
Brian Butler, Oxbow Associates.
okay? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to, your punch list, there you got from the planning department. We have our surveyor's seal on, this is the plan, I've just submitted 2 copies, to you for the file, and I sent an electronic copy as well today by email. If you need it on disk or something, please let me know. Surveyor stamp, the land court reference, you mentioned there, we did not, I don't believe I add the, I think it's American Way or American Ave or American Drive, it was a subdivision on the adjacent property, it just, it's not germane to this project out here, and this is just for perspective, this has already been reviewed separately. I think that was the gist of the, question, the survey stamp, the planning board, oh, and I'm sorry, the, owner attribution has also been corrected. I actually, somewhat guilty, we printed, 12 sets of that, and right as we started to wrap them up, I realized that the attribution was wrong, so I said, well, you guys can still get it in that day by noon, I think, so I let that slide, but that's been, and it's 2 complete plan sets, as I said, I just delivered, and an electronic copy, that I emailed to you this afternoon. This, site is the portion of the Baker Hughes, parcel that's west of the, was landlocked, or still is landlocked, I guess. On the westerly side of the railroad grade off of Summer Street. There's no street frontage, is parcel oven by itself. It's about 25.3 acres. It has the front of the Cedar Swamp Brook forming the north boundary, the railroad track forming the eastern boundary. This is also the subject, as well as the Kowski parcel and 100 acres, I think, on the east side of the track, subject to an ANRAD reviewed by this commission about 2005. It was submitted, or at least prepared by Beals and Thomas, and we consulted that as well, the archival file for that. All right, we delineated this partly in June, our notice of intent, or our notice, ANRAD indicates it was flagged in June and September, but only a portion was flagged in June. That would have been here, and some of this overlap here. The property lines, the rest was done recently in September, including the riverfront area. Landis and I walked the site yesterday, just in the, kind of the one suitable gap between snow events that we've had recently, and we systematically walked the areas and the changes affect, I think both shows. There is overlap on these sheets. The changes we affected, and I sent you an email this afternoon to of your recollection. Essentially, we cut out, in order to the two amendments here, we cut out one single flag here, just join these two. So that's supplemental flagging of the tape. And similarly, over this section, between B1, B1 and 146, we eliminated 5 flags, I think. We examined soils and the other features of this area. We were going back and forth, and it became evident that we could put 5 flags back there and do a lot of math and a lot of, really no great effect in user, so we just sat the line between 46 and 51 and made that amendment reflect on the plan of record. We also looked at, there's a couple of potential vernal pools on the property that were identified in the Beatles filing from many years ago. There is reference as vernal pool or potential vernal pool on two. We only have 2 on this property, which are also on the Beatles plan. There's a body here that's seasonally flooded. It does have a patent, somewhat patent, but probably included culvert that drains over this wetland that's somehow connected, I don't know, I assume Aqueduct drains to that and somehow drains to it, I'm not sure. So we have a series of vernal pool flags that are just there for, or potential vernal pool, because we've never identified actual obligate species there at this date. It could get fish in it seasonally, although the culvert looks a little underwhelming, so it would have to work, redfin pickerel, banded sunfish would have to work to get in there. This is an isolated pool, fairly, although it's not really determined, it meets biological criteria, I think we can all assume so. And this was the E wetland, so we have the E BBW, or isolated wetland actually, shown here in the green, and then interior to that is the purple, the limit of flooding for the vernal pool, and this is for the potential vernal pool here similarly. This is an area that's subject to flood, as map is, let's have floodplain. We're not asking for the confirmation or affirmation of that, only because it's not base flood elevation associated. It's a zone floodplain associated with the river, and it cuts across contours, and so we'll resolve that if and when it needs resolution. We are asking for the affirmation of the riverfront mean annual high water and the projected riverfront area that's shown. We can highlight it. This is the 100-foot buffer and riparian zone and dot stylation. That's there. 100 out of 100 in buffer zone for the respective wetlands. This is wetland C nominally. In the old filing, it was termed or determined to be an isolated vegetated wetland, which it's isolated in the generic and the common sense, but from a regulatory sense, there's a standpoint, it's in this, the gravity goes this way, uphill here. Slight ponding in here in places. There is a pretty pronounced channel that was probably excavated by a farmer in the past, and then it backs up here. There's a slight ponding here. There was some spillover through the melt, but it wasn't channelized and it wasn't in a vegetated area. But Landis and I noted that there is discharge from that that will have to be anticipated in any kind of development.
I'm going to interrupt
Go ahead.
for a minute here. You have that plan way down there. We can't even see it from here.
Okay, you want me to move
Okay?
it?
And you're rambling on and on and on, and
Okay.
we don't know what page you're on or anything.
sorry.
So
I'm on C, this is C.
You can move the,
move the easel up here so we can see what you're doing.
No, hold it that way, because I'm used to the other room where, so crowded that you need backup, so I'll do this is, I'll come back to the original, master sheet. So just for perspective, I have a smaller scale now. This is the wetland AA, this is wetland C, I was just referencing. The river is up here, of course, and wetland E, which is an isolated wetland, is here along the track. So those are the things I've referenced. The river, of course, forms the northerly property boundary here of the site. We did find a benchmark or a concrete block out there. It was, it wasn't Baker Hughes, what was the initials on it?
No, Bird Machine.
Bird Machine, that's, yeah, so they evidently had their own customized, boundary markers installed out there at one time. Essentially, there's about 1,500 feet of erosion area that we're asking for approval on. This is the southerly portion, let's go back to the northern portion, all the way down. This is C3 that we, talked about before. About 1,500 feet of riverfront that we've asked for approval on, and about 4928 or so of BBW that we're requesting review and endorsement of. This is the wetland C I was mentioning before that is nominally called a isolated wetland on the earlier ANRAD, but we, based on case, precedents and case law, anything that has flow internal or downgrading of it in a defined channel with a gradient to it is typically been referred to as bordering, even if it doesn't physically border on a river, pond, lake, or ocean. The rest of the site is rolling topography, some outcrops along the easterly portion of pudding stone, big loafs of that, and some erratics laying around about. There was some soil testing done out here in the recent past that showed groundwater from high in the upland from 30 to 96 inches. That was examining future stormwater management issues there. I think that's probably everything I have to say about this parcel. I don't know if Landis has any insight to lend to you.
Yeah, so if you, let me stay on that page. So I know when we were out there, it had rained, so there was good areas, plenty of water. And there, the more I started to think about this, I did mention with the overspill from this wetland C, there was a fair amount of overflow, and the way it was coming out, it was going along what was perhaps a path
Is
or
it dirt bike trail?
a dirt bike
Yeah.
trail, or I'm not even sure what, actually, but it was a meandering channel
Yeah,
with flow.
yeah.
And
Although it seeped out of this, I think, fringe here. It seeped out two places.
There was two
Yeah.
paths. One, it was
Yeah.
going through this more channelized
Yeah.
flow, and the other one, it was sheep flowing.
Cheap flow, but that one is the one that picked up and came down this dirt where the
Well,
kind of dirt bike
the
guys are.
meandering one came around and then eventually met both down towards the river.
I don't recall them turning up, because I remember we walked down to the wall here, and
Yeah.
there was still a little bit of water, yeah.
Right, but the water that was in the channel was going down towards
Yeah, it was headed,
it was heading in the
Toward the
same
river, yeah.
direction, flowing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I went back and reread the definition of a bank and an intermittent stream, and
yeah, there's portions of it that clearly, especially where it was really deeply cut by the, where we were kind of speculating what the motorcycles were
right,
doing
but could
back
it
there.
have been a path that that the bicycles, when it wasn't flowing, made deeper? I mean, what was it first? To me, what I saw was flowing water down a channel. So, and it met the definition of intermittent stream with bank. And it's definitely, the water now flows out of this wetlands and heads downhill. When there's development, it's gonna do that. It's gonna be issue of flooding and water quality. So I think it needs to be addressed. I thought of it after I came back to the office, that it shouldn't be, it's not nothing.
Yeah, and certainly the flow,
there is a
the net
channel.
flow is from here to here across the entire site, so I think that.
No, there is a channel that's coming from
Right.
that
From here.
wetlands series
Somewhere in
C.
this area,
Yes, yeah.
So are you saying, Landis, that should be shown on
Yeah,
a
why isn't
plan
it shown?
as at least an intermittent stream, if not a continuous stream?
The reason it's not shown, one is it's not an obvious connection without some water like we saw after the extreme melt. And again, my recollection that the patency from here to down, as you get down gradient, it picks up as a more defined channel, where some guy with a Yamaha 250 had gone around and around repeatedly back. But as we said, nobody's been riding out there recently, but They're clearly a sinuous kind of dirt.
The
bike
channel
track.
was coming from the wetlands. The flow was coming from the
Yes,
wetlands
it was flowing from
around the
It
channel.
was like a again, I didn't really study it because I wasn't, but my recollection here is that it was kind of a rack line of needles that bled over and then it consolidated at some point down gradient. I honestly didn't, scrutinize it that carefully.
I think it needs to be looked at a little bit more.
Okay.
Right, because what I observed was there was two, if I could.
Yeah.
I know, we probably should have talked about it a little bit more when we were out there, but it was a long walk. There's some sheet flow coming from here, but then I don't know exactly where point it was the channel that was kind of meandering through the trees in a defined channel, and then it started to sheet flow. So,
I recall this one more, I don't, I remember we came from that direction, but
yeah.
we can certainly look at it.
I think it needs to be looked at it a little more, because I think it is an issue. There is flow. There was a defined channel. Could have been because it was a path, I don't know, but that's where the water was seeking.
Yeah, and this branch was clearly that dirt bike trail. This is a kind of an old, not logging road, some kind of haul road across here that, I think probably made that, makes that in town more so than it would have before the farmers. And they also told the trench, there is a clearly defined stream here, or a bank, but I don't argue that. This
I
one
don't
they
think the
told
reg
okay.
says if the defined channel is made by a dirt bike, it's
No,
not a
it
defined
actually
channel.
doesn't. No, it can be made out of stone or rock or
Okay,
cement. Yeah.
right, and it could have been more of a channel before the dirt bikes got out there, so I mean, it looked old, it wasn't active at the moment,
Right.
but it looked like water had been flowing down it for,
I'm sure,
perhaps a
in
while.
events like we had here.
yes,
with water.
yeah, and this wasn't even a very big event, I mean, we have a lot more flooding and water in the spring, so.
If that's the case, then we should keep this open so we can investigate that and kind of evaluate it so we don't make any rash. I want to look at it, we can have it surveyed, 1 foot topo is kind of standard survey for that, for a bank, at least. Other than that, is everything?
I would suggest that, yes, so I did make note when we were out there that I thought it was important to make note of it on the plan, but then the more I thought of it and went over the regulations, I think it needs to be looked at a little bit further.
Anything else? Doug, any questions?
No, I don't, not at this time.
Media?
Not right now, thanks.
Roger?
Well, I am wondering what would happen in 100-year or better storm when the climate is changing and the wetlands are going to be much larger, plus there's going to be enough impervious surface. And it's going to affect the wetlands, and things of that nature.
Yeah, from a functional standpoint, in terms of the bank, the number of functions in the statutory functions for bank, one's wildlife habitat, if you have cavities, burrows, overhanging trees, basking, features and that sort of thing, which I think we clearly don't have that. And there's also just conveyance of stormwater and surface water, and you may argue that function would be attributed to that because it's water's going from A to B, at least part of it's in a defined channel. But so that would be the functional values to that in either under current conditions or under exacerbated conditions in the future.
Yeah, but I don't see the marks where the 100-year, they could be expanded. Okay.
Again, it's not an elevation associated floodplain, but, so we didn't want to ask that for confirmation. That line is the dotted line here. Yeah, it's a FEMA line, but it, like, as you can see here, it crosses contours.
Did you take any consideration for global warming?
No, there was no,
I know there's nothing to it, but, it's a big investment you're gonna have there.
it would more likely be a flooding up than, the most worrisome part of the climate change and rising sea levels and storm events would be flooding up, I think, from here The floodplain might, as the FEMA keeps mapping it, every time they revise it, longer for an area, they raise a foot or two typically. So that would be my anticipation with the floodplain, raised from the Cedar Swamp Brook. These areas I don't think would generate a flood. And we have, actually, there's another feature on here. It seems to be a mismap that we want to work out. I'll just mention it kind of quickly. FEMA shows floodplain in this area, sheet C2. The railroad track to Walpole AA or central Walpole AA. The flood may not be turned on here. The flood layer here is shifted from, this is clearly a depressed area, depressed area, 180, 198 elevation here and 200 here. And the mapping of the FEMA layer is skewed from, so we want to bring those together. Because it's clearly, if there is back flooding from the pond over here, it's not going, uphill. It's going into the low portion first. So some of this is probably floodplain as well. But it's, right now, the way the mapping from FEMA has it, it's skewed north, I think, by 80 feet or 60 feet or something. So that remains to be determined for construction and for just planning purposes to stay out of the floodplain.
Anything else, George?
Well, not for now. I will have, I know.
Okay, Betsy?
Yeah, so you have a slightly different set of plans than we do, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, because I just, we
Right.
did this yesterday.
So on
and-
so on C3, I'm just trying to see, what extra verbiage do you have there that can't catch a glimpse of on your plan? Yeah, so underneath your pink line, what does that say? Because it's not on ours.
Both have
No,
to
it's
go-
not, so.
What?
Various rock outcrops?
Oh, is that what it says?
I'm sorry,
Okay,
yeah.
I kept trying to see what it was.
Not
So,
sure,
and is there anything else that you,
The labeling's been enhanced at all besides that, your BBW labeled here, BBW labeled here.
okay, and now you've got the vernal pools in on C2.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I apologize, I forgot that you were looking at. There's E and AA.
All right, okay, thanks.
Previously identified during the,
Anything else, Betsy?
That's it.
Al?
My first question is, Landis, did you look at every one of these wetland flags on all of these sheets?
Yes, yes, we did, 3.5 hours.
Okay.
You wonder
That's a-
why you
that's
weren't-
a-
you
that's a
wonder why
lot of-
you weren't invited?
That's a lot of wetland line.
Yeah.
It was.
It's 5,000 feet, it's a
Yeah.
mile of wetland line plus.
Okay. So that was my first question. The second thing is, I pretty much agree that some of these channels that flow water, like in my neighborhood, don't flow water every day, but every time it rains heavy, there's a flow, and we need to know where that goes and where it comes from. So I'm sure that in the days when this was part of Bird Machine, and they were building centrifuges to make uranium into nuclear material, if their security was so bad that somebody on a dirt bike was digging up the place, they would have been upset and they would have done something about it. So any of these dirt bike things, trails and things are relatively new.
Yeah, I think it's,
So,
I said to Landis, I think the kid probably graduated from high school and
Yeah.
no longer has a dirt bike.
okay, so I'm not gonna blame some dirt bike for making the channel for the water to flow in. I think it's been doing it for many years, maybe 100 or more. So I think that, like that area that Landis was describing, that ought to be on this plan, because when this property comes for development, If they just willy-nilly obliterate those flow channels, then what's there after development is going to be a problem. So I want to make sure that we're not allowing some problems to be generated and have somebody come back and say, well, you didn't do your job here, because now I'm being flooded because there was a channel there 100 years ago and you didn't pay any attention to it. So I think that things like that ought to be on the plan. Even though it may not be a wetland line, there should be contours showing it.
Yeah, it's pretty subtle, but we can certainly do that.
I don't see it
Instrument
on
survey, yeah.
on this plan, so.
It belies this, 1 foot or 2 foot contours.
So there are places on this property that I have questions about, so I'm not gonna make a decision tonight anyway.
Okay, anybody in the audience have any questions? Okay. We're gonna revise, take a look at that and revise.
Yeah, we'll get out there and, clean snow, and hopefully, and do some the regulatory feature or not.
I can send you an email, you must have, maybe it was too late. It's up to me.
Probably left about that,
But,
yeah, we'll, examine that and circle back with you
Yep,
to just,
sounds good.
and just pray for,
Our next hearing is January 8th. Is that, you can get that done?
Yes, well,
Feel we can get the
whether
paperwork in?
notwithstanding, we can,
Okay, so.
under current
we have a
conditions, we can do it.
We have a 7:30, so 7:45.
Okay.
Someone make that a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
7:45 on January 8th.
On January 8th, do you need a signature for that?
Chairman and Commissioners, they have been out on the other side of the property doing some test
Oh, okay.
pits. And they've been great. They've been really careful about where they've been. They have swamp mats to go over the wetlands where there's only one area they've gone over, and they've been very good with their test pits. That doesn't always happen. And Brian's been out there with them. So does the commission mind if, I told them, don't go on this side yet till the ANRAD, if they do some of the test pits on this side prior to the decision, as long as they're, not crossing wetlands and staying away from the resource
Yeah,
areas?
that area would be.
I don't know if that'll be helpful, Brian, because I know it might be
Yeah, that'd
setting
be
back your time a little
Simply
bit.
because if we do get snowed in, that would really,
What I've asked for is, kind of a path of where they're going and where the test pits are
Yeah, I
gonna
think
be.
the
And
main thing is, we don't
and
want
those
that
should-
area.
right, just stay away from
In
that
this
area that
area,
we're
essentially,
looking
yeah,
at.
nothing
Yeah, nothing
down
down
here.
there,
Yeah.
but in the
it's a-
upland areas and the,
cluster of 5 or 6 over here, they're outside buffer zone, I believe. There may be one that's tangential to the buffer, or just in. at the
Anybody
edge
have
of
any
the
issue with that?
I don't, but I think the location of them should appear on the plan.
buffer. We do have a plan.
they've
that-
submitted it to me, so
Yeah, I didn't
I'll
wanna
make sure the commissioners
clutter
knows
an
it.
ANRAD plan with, non-ANRAD related material, but we have that plan, and I
If
think we
they're,
provided that.
if they're operating in a responsible way and not
Yeah,
leaving a
they-
big mess, I don't
Yeah,
have a
they've
problem.
been doing very good.
Yeah, we've ridden herd on the operators, and, actually, we've got a good operator with a smaller machine than we anticipated. And we used plastic polymer mats to cross instead of timber mats,
Yeah.
and they worked quite well. I mean, they were pretty surgical. One crossing was made with a single one, and it was pulled out, we went out, did 5 test pits, pulled it out on the way back, and the other ones are still there, but they're not even, they're on rocks kind of across the wetland, so they're not even including the flow, or they're just really not in contact with the wetland.
Okay, we'll see you on the 8th.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I need to take a quick break.
We're gonna take a quick break. Mr. Petrosi is here for, you here for something else, or you just don't have
Minor
any place to
modification.
go?
Minor modification.
Oh, that one.
All about me, huh?
Okay. This is for, okay, this is for lot 8, or lot 2 at Boyden Lane. That's a minor modification. That's the variance from section 1.41 of Walpole bylaw regulation to allow a partial 10-foot no alteration zone instead of 25-foot, an alteration of 1,190 square feet within the 25-foot no alteration zone. Okay. Why don't you move that up closer so we can see? I don't think we did. We got this? We got it here? Maybe we got it. You got a, this is the plan we're looking at dated November 8th?
Correct. The bottom is November 8th, the top is the original order conditions. So once again, we have a situation where we're asking for a variation from the 25-foot no alteration zone to allow for a repositioning of the house on the property and enhancing the, in this particular case, we do show the details of a stone wall there, Al. And the plantings that are proposed to enhance the habitat within the buffer area. This particular case, we're proposing to alter 1,190 square feet of the no alteration zone. So we're maintaining roughly a 10-foot no alteration zone in lieu of a 25-foot no alteration zone. Submitted this as a minor modification. So, Commission feels that this is not a minor modification and was of intent. Or if the commission denies the minor modification, we would submit a new notice of intent.
Okay. Lance?
I don't think a modification to a regulated area is a minor modification.
Okay. Doug?
No questions.
Emilio?
Yeah, I agree with the land side. I just don't think modifying an existing order to suit the size of the house is appropriate.
Roger?
Well, I think you're trying to go from 25 feet to 10 feet, right?
In this particular area right here.
That area there.
Primarily, yes.
we've worked very hard to try to maintain the 25-foot for years. And I would think that some of this should have been brought up a long time ago in the original planning, but I know things happen. You know, we are changing the location of the house, to move the house a little bit further away, or you have a setback problem, sidewalk problem?
No, I think he's moved it closer.
So we're actually, originally, the house was pushed back to the rear property setback line. Now we're trying to move it a little bit. We've actually made the building a little small, but we've moved it further away from the rear property line. I understand what you're saying in terms of what could have been discussed during the original permitting process, but we find ourselves where we are today. The regulations do allow for the commission to grant a variance of this regulation. As I mentioned before, it's a policy that you've inserted into your regulations. It's not cast in stone.
Can I read from, so the regulations, wetlands section regulations, section 1.41, no alteration of zone. The commission shall require the applicant to maintain a 25-foot wide contiguous undisturbed vegetative buffer measured from parallel to the wetlands boundary as a minimum. I don't see anything that says policy. An applicant may request a variation from the minimum 25-foot no alteration zone. The applicant shall, okay, so the applicant may request a variation
That's what we're doing. Yeah.
from, right, you just said the commission can give a variance. So the applicant can request a,
Semantics.
the applicant shall provide the commission information, evidence of why a variation is needed and how the applicant will meet the purpose of the bylaw to protect wetlands, water resources, and adjoining land as stated in section 1 of the bylaw.
Right, and I think I did provide that in the memorandum. So in section, you read one section, but you didn't read the previous section. So previous section 1.3 says, the Conservation Commission has had an ongoing policy of including in the order of conditions, a condition designating a minimum of 25 feet of bordering land as a no alteration area. So it's a policy, it's not.
No,
a
no,
regulation.
no, that was
no,
saying
this
that we
is-
had a policy
Just
and
let me
now it's a
clarify this.
regulation.
This was prior to the regulations, that this was something we
Well,
had
then you're saying
determined to
that
do,
happened in there.
and as a result of comments and decisions from DEP, said we had to have a regulation.
Right.
So the policy was not sufficient, according to DEP, so that's why we came up with a regulation.
Yeah.
So the mention of the word policy is just what it used to be prior to the regulation. Just to clarify that, so
Okay,
you're aware.
That's fine, I think
Okay.
that's a fair assessment,
Okay.
but it's,
And I think one other clarification, how we got to this point, years ago, we had no, years and years ago, we had no boundary from development to the wetland line. Some places went right up to the wetland line with development. We found very quickly that this was detrimental to the resource area. We then had a 10-foot, and that, again, was a policy which most people went along with, so we got into a situation where DEP got involved, and then we got up to this. The 10 feet, we found, was not working. We know that we did some research at that point. Some towns, from what I recall, included the complete 100-foot buffer zone as no disturb, which we thought was a little unreasonable. So we decided what is reasonable to protect the resource area. And we decided that we knew the 10 feet wasn't working, so 25 feet, and that seems to have worked quite well since we've implemented that. It's been a number of years, I don't know how many offhand, but it's been a number of years. So that's just the background, and the results have been what we intended, that we're protecting the resource area. So,
Well, Roger, did you finish? Did you finish?
Well, my thought was, what is wrong with the original plan? Why do you have to move the house down?
I think it creates problems later on for homeowners, and we're trying to alleviate that.
The homeowner wanted to move it down?
No, we haven't sold the house, we haven't started construction on it yet, but we're into, when we start consideration for construction on these lots, people foresee problems, and we try to address those problems before we start construction on a house. Now, in this particular case, people may come in for accessory buildings, for a pool. So, for example, let's say they decide they want to put a pool back here. They have to come back to this commission, but they certainly can do that. We could probably, come up with a better situation to allow things to be done on this lot that might not be practical under this scenario. So, it's about planning. It's about, doing things the right way.
okay. Anything else, Roger?
Hey, Landis, I don't know why are you laughing? You think this is funny?
No,
This is,
I apologize. I'm laughing because you said it's all about planning. However, you knew about the bylaw, you knew about the
I know the
25-foot
bylaw. The bylaw is
alteration area, you know about the wetlands all before you subdivided the lots. So
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
where the planning could have occurred, so that you had lots that you could build along the constraints of the bylaw and the Wetlands Protection Act.
The regulations allow for a variance to be requested and granted by this commission, and that's what I'm here
It does-
for.
Okay.
And I'm offended by the fact that I'm here at 9 o'clock at night, as you guys are, and you're laughing. And I'm,
Well,
it's
I
not.
Well,
think
then you're
that-
offended, Lou.
I'm
I
offended,
apologize,
yes,
but,
exactly.
well,
You think
then,
it's a laughing matter, it's not a laughing matter.
Okay,
We'll see what the judge has to say when we get to that point, okay?
okay.
Because that's where
And
this
you
is
have- All
going.
right, that's enough.
okay.
Your
Um,
bylaw has nothing to stand on, so.
Well, that's not the subject at the moment. Roger, did you have anything else?
No,
That's it?
Yeah, so, first of all, I wanna say, I don't think it's a minor modification, but I also wanna say that we don't think about 10 feet very much in this commission, but I think you and I are 10 feet apart right now, and that doesn't look like the sort of distance that would protect a wetland from a homeowner using the land as much as a homeowner wants to use their land. It just doesn't seem enough distance. If you were standing back there, 25 feet, it seems like what we intended. So I'm just visualizing it and not thinking that's the right thing in this situation. Also, you said that we could have discussed this before, back when you were doing this subdivision, but I still contend we couldn't have, that's just not up for discussion. Your original plan may have been a really poor one, but I just don't think it's our business to get involved with what a homeowner, a hypothetical homeowner might want in a home and where they might hypothetically want a swimming pool. You had the house back, I think it should be back. I think they could still put a swimming pool off to the side where you pointed. I think you should go back to the original, plan and maybe not second guess a homeowner who's, doesn't even exist yet, and I don't think we should be either. I mean, we're not here to try to help you figure out how to help a future homeowner. We're here to try to protect the green area there.
So, from what I'm hearing is that you have this wording in your regulations, but you really don't consider it under any circumstances. In other words, how many times have you granted a
Very
variance?
seldom.
Yeah,
Very
but
seldom.
but we
So-
do occasionally.
Yeah, so it's like a very high hurdle that you have to
No, it's not,
overcome.
no, you correct
So-
that.
It's
It's not
often-
it's a standard, no more than the wetland line, the 100-foot buffer zone, and the 25-foot no disturb. We came at this as I explained before, based on our experience over a period of years. So, I think-
The Walpole's no different. We deal with it in every town. Every town tries to assert a certain no disturbance zone. Most towns, some towns are more balance the interests of the act versus the buffer than others. You know, it's all up to you folks. I mean, if
Right.
I'm not happy about what the outcome is, then we have recourse. I mean, it's plain
Okay.
and simple. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trying to reach a happy medium, as I said on the previous lot. We think that we can do a better job. Yeah, 10 feet is not a lot, but if you're building a wall and if you're doing other things that prevent further incursion into that area, then you're doing a better job.
So we do grant 10 feet sometimes for a grandfathered situation or some kind of extremely awkward pre-existing situation, but all of this is hypothetical, and I just don't see us, when you've got that house that could be moved back a little bit, I just don't see us trying to make an
Right.
adjustment around
Listen,
10 feet.
I
This
can-
doesn't feel like the kind of thing that we do a variance on. But
Okay.
it's
The reason you want a variance is to have a bigger backyard. That's not a reason. It's not a reason.
But are we doing anything that's more detrimental
Yes.
than, well, you don't think so?
25 is better than 10.
Well, how do you know?
Now, as I said before, we found from experience when we were using 10-foot that we were having problems with the resource areas because we had needed an additional buffer. And that's how we came up with the 25 feet. So that's it. Anything else, Betsy?
No,
Al?
Well, evidently, Lou hasn't read anything that has come out in recent years about the value of buffer zones. MACC has published quite an extensive document about buffer zones, and it discusses buffer zones being more than 100 feet in some cases, because there are several purposes for buffer zones. One is habitat, other is, as Landis mentioned, filters bad things out of the water before it gets to the wetland, and things like that. And in the document that I have recently read, there are some places where the recommendation is hundreds of feet of buffer zone to provide protection to the wetland. So this business of whittling it down because it's more convenient for somebody to build a house, that's not looking at the value of the buffer zone as protection for the wetland and to provide the services that it does to the wetland. So I also feel that it's not a minor modification. I don't see that
Including in some regulations.
having the 10-foot, if it is 10-foot, has much value. 25-foot may not even be enough. So it depends on who lives there and what they do and how they do it. And my experience with landscapers in recent years is they come in with a truckload of liquid fertilizer and they spray it on, and it contains not only fertilizer, but it includes insecticides and herbicides and everything else, and they want to do that 3 or 4 times a year. I'm not convinced that 10 feet is going to do much to help us out. So since this town receives its water supply from the ground, and we all drink it every day, and we bathe in it every day, I think that we have an obligation to make sure that we do as much as we can, not as little as we can. So I'm not in favor of a minor modification for a smaller protection to the wetland.
Okay, we have two issues. One is to consider this as a minor modification. Someone want to make a motion to either make it a minor, accept it as a minor modification, accept the application as a minor modification, or not? One way or the other, someone makes that a motion?
I'll move that we do not accept it as a minor modification.
Any second? Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 600. So that takes care of the modification issue. As far as the buffer zone is concerned, your alternative would be to file a new notice of intent for this revised property. I think you've got a pretty good idea of the sentiment regarding our 25-foot no disturb zone. So that's up to you on what you want to do.
We'll file a new notice of intent. We'll deal with the consequences after we file.
Okay.
And Al, I do read all the conservation things, and you'll find out that not all wetlands are the same and not all
That's
buffer
true.
zones are the same.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying?
I know that.
Okay.
But 10 foot is not enough anywhere.
You can't pick an arbitrary number and apply it blanketly across the whole universe. And that's what you've done here in Walpole.
Okay. So where are we? The guy left is the TV guy. I guess we cover everything. Right.
You did all the certificates of
Let's
compliance?
see, well, we didn't, the one that,
That you say no.
said
No, we-
no.
Oh, Lincoln Road, yeah.
We did all the
So,
ones we're
We
supposed to.
did the two
Okay.
that were, we said were
Yeah.
okay. So
How about
we did that.
How about the extension?
Extension?
Extensions, where is that? Okay, Carmichael Day Lily Lane, someone want to make a motion for a 12-month extension?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 600.
While we're signing this, Landis, can I ask, did you ask the town administrator about geocaching? Because I think that's the next, that was gonna be the next step.
I apologize.
Yeah, because I had someone from
Right, so
request to use Adams Farm,
everything's at a standstill in Walpole,
Okay.
so
for those who care about
I
geocaching.
just advised them that we have
The small
to be on our
subset.
agenda
hot
for
topic in
January
here.
6th.
Extremely hot.
Oh, you're
Oh, yeah,
you're Adams Farm.
Adams Farm, yeah.
Inadvertently, I did, yeah.
Oh, that's right, inadvertently.
If it has to go before the Board of
I
Selectmen.
know, I had it on my
or
desk,
what
but I
the-
couldn't remember what I was supposed to do. Sorry. I should have written a better note to myself.
Well, do you want to
No,
email me and ask
Well, I
me?
have it written here now on my report.
Well, I guess
so-
just see if it needs to go before the Board of
Right,
Selectmen
yeah.
with some kind of a presentation.
Which I would think it,
And I'd be willing to try to do that too, but step one is the,
right.
And see how we do that. All right, what else we got here? You want to do, what did we do? The extension is done. Okay, we saw planning board, New Pond Village, we have an order of conditions on that, right? Isn't that the one we did? With they want to make a modification? Do we need to vote on that, or we got to wait for a formal request?
They haven't made a request. I know that it's before the planning board now, and the fire department had some concerns about the impervious pavers. They didn't particularly like them or where they were, because they feel they don't get maintained the same way as pavement does. So I think the town engineer was gonna suggest that they move the pavers to another location where they could still take the infiltration amount, but not be at the access at kind of a crucial place in the access road, where if they weren't maintained properly, they could be a problem, so.
Would that mean they'd be removed, or they would put regular pavement down in that area where the pavers were?
It hasn't been done yet, it's still in the planning board, so.
But I mean, what would the alternative be? I forget exactly why the pavers were there. It was in lieu of pavement, wasn't it?
Correct.
So that means if they don't want the pavers, then they would pave it.
Correct.
So now they've got to compensate for
Well,
that loss of
what the
infiltration.
town administrator was saying was they could move the pervious pavers to another part within the same watershed, which was not at the critical access point going around the building. They could put them somewhere else, where they would
With
still,
pile of stones someplace else.
where it would have been paved before, but it would be an area where it wouldn't be a problem for the fire trucks coming around the corner.
Is the problem that they have trouble in the winter plowing the snow off of those? Is what?
I think that's the concern.
Or
that
either
it's-
way, they've got to come, then if they're going to change that, they have to come back to us, right? Because
Yeah,
this
because
is
they
a
change the plan.
drainage issue? Okay.
It's such a small, insignificant amount, really, but if the commission, yes, if the commission wants them to come back, then I will tell them they need to come back if they change the plan.
Okay, so I guess it's okay with us because the fire department has requested it. We don't have any objection to that, but they're gonna change the plan to show that, then they still need to show us what the revision is. So they have to come back to us.
So you want them to come
Yeah.
back to ask
Well,
for a
just
minor
ask.
modification, or
Well-
just show it on their as-built?
I would think that could be shown as an as-built.
No, because it
What?
changes the infiltration of water into the ground.
It's not
That was the reason for it.
This was
Right, so there were, just the location would be changed, just the location
of the,
of the
So
impervious
if
pavers.
you take the pavers out and put asphalt there.
Yep.
In that spot, it changes the infiltration of rainwater into the ground. Okay, so then what?
they'll put pavers someplace else.
Someplace else,
to-
to compensate
to
for that
compensate.
infiltration.
Well, does that mean they'll take up some asphalt somewhere else?
They will not put the asphalt down somewhere else, instead they'll put the impervious pavers down, in a
Okay.
place which is not as, it's, the building's here, and it's kind of like on a curve,
Yeah, okay, so
with a
if
head wall,
if
with a
the end
wall.
result is that there's
And in addition to that, the amount is
a similar amount of
very small.
asphalt and a similar amount of pavers as on the original proposal, I don't see an issue. But if they're gonna take up the pavers and put asphalt there and asphalt everywhere else that they were proposing, then that changes the stormwater infiltration.
Yep,
Okay,
agreed.
so-
So if
So
they're
it
just
depends on
moving
what
them
they're-
to another location, which would have been pavement,
yeah.
and then put the pavers down there instead, that would be
Well,
fine.
then that could show up on an as-built plan, because both areas were originally gonna be paved, but whether you put bricks there or asphalt there, doesn't make any difference. As you say, it would be an insignificant amount of change.
Well,
The bottom line is the impervious surface remains unchanged. They're just repositioning
Yeah,
two surfaces.
I think
Okay.
probably the amount of infiltration that the small area of impervious pavers is gonna take is insignificant also, but since they've already proposed it, yeah, they should just move it to another location where they won't change the equation for what water is going into the ground.
Okay, so if that's the process, then they can do it as
Okay.
a,
and it's
As-built.
interesting, I was looking at that plan just the other day.
You were looking,
okay, what else we got
we'd rather
here?
have work out these things prior to.
Okay, you're suggesting we do like a policy.
Well, actually, after our conversation tonight, I am suggesting that we, again, put, we advertise and put on our agenda, except we might want to pick a different date than January 8th, to revise some stuff in our regulations. So maybe perhaps we should put something in regarding the minor modification. It just seems like a lot of people lately have been submitting plans, they submit plans, then they go back and something happens, and all of a sudden there's a minor modification, and DEP's policy for amendments it's a administrative change, and it just seems to be getting bigger and bigger what constitutes a modification. And I'd be easier just to stop them in the office and say, well,
Yeah.
So you want to clarify?
working in the 25-foot no alteration area is not a minor modification, so don't even bother going through this.
So just more clarity and more,
Yeah.
examples and definitions.
So that would then become a part of the regulation,
You could do that.
which requires a public hearing.
Right,
And
was-
the regulation doesn't have to go before town meeting,
Right,
correct? So, but we do have to advertise it.
right. And I
And you
was,
want to do that for the stormwater and erosion control bylaw.
right, we started that process early
Right.
on, and then I stopped it to kind of work on if it should be our bylaw, or if it should be our regulations. And I read the bylaws, and I think it's fine if we just do the changes in the regulations, that it doesn't have to, we don't have to open up the bylaw to do these stormwater changes. So I think we should go back and do that. We could wait till the second meeting, and we can wait till the second meeting in January, now that we have a lot of continuances for the first meeting in January. So that might be a better solution, just so that we have a little time to discuss it, because sometimes with these things, it's like, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and we want to discuss a very important issue. And so if we put it on the second meeting in January, and then try and hold a good block for it where we actually can discuss
Yeah,
these
let's hope we
revisions.
don't have a whole lot of agenda that night.
Not yet, right,
Not
and
yet.
I think we should just,
We might.
right now, we have a fair amount on January 8th with all these
Too much,
continuances.
yeah.
So does that make sense
Yep.
Yeah, but block off a chunk of time so we can.
for the second meeting in January?
Did you say
We'll advertise for
DEP has a role about minor modification? Is that what you
They,
said?
they have a policy regarding amendments.
Oh, but not about minor modifications?
They don't even have any minor modifications. There is no such, there's
Oh,
there's amendments, either advertised or
Oh,
non-advertised,
okay.
and it's a minor administrative change.
Okay.
Well, whether you call it a modification or an amendment.
It's the
we're
same
talking-
thing.
We're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
I just wondered if that's
Whatever
something you
you
can
want.
cite, when you said that you'd like to stop it in the office, so it doesn't get as far as like a lengthy discussion.
I
Can you
have, but
cite
the
that?
commission has given that latitude before, so. So I,
we need to
I
come
think maybe
together
we
on-
need to define a little more,
Okay.
make it a little stronger if that's,
Sure.
Okay, I won't be here then.
oh, you won't be here the second meeting
No.
in January?
Oh, are you gonna be gone for like a month and a half or something?
Give or take.
Huh.
I'll be back the last meeting in March. I'll be here for the 8th, and then the last meeting in March, whatever that date is. Second meeting in March.
Mhm.
But you can carry on. So, what do you want to do?
It's up to you guys.
Well, put it on,
Or November.
put it on the next meeting.
Probably Veterans Day is that day.
No, no, this, look, Jack, you're more or less on board with this. This is not gonna be like a huge, like, divisive discussion, right? I don't see packing it onto January 8th when we just acknowledge there's like too much going on. I
No,
think we can handle it.
I'm sure that, whatever you know, I'm one vote out of the
Right, and
6, you will need,
and you
you will
agree
need
with us,
4 people
and you agree
there
with
for
us,
the meeting,
right?
so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Okay, so,
basically, what we've done, I think we've sort of, it seems to me that if it's what we've called a major amendment, that we required that to be advertised,
Correct.
which wouldn't change, right?
Right.
I mean, so
So-
whether we're calling it a modification or an amendment, we're talking about the same thing. What we've seen recently is people trying to bring up what we have considered to be a major modification or amendment as a minor. And that was so that we've turned that down. They've got to advertise it.
Right.
So
So just give them a little more direction
I
that
don't
this
know that-
definitely is a minor.
I don't know if there's gonna be anything different, the end result in any different, other than we have something, you see, if they're modifying the, resource area or affecting the resource area, usually it's, they move the house back or something, which we've all gone along with, till it's further away from, the construction's further away from the resource area, so we've gone along with that. So I don't see any change in what we've been doing that this would bring about, other than it would perhaps curtail some of them applying for it
Right.
without, or applying for it as a minor one, when it's really should be a
Right.
major one.
Right.
And they can change their plan if they want to.
all right, so it's
Okay,
on for the
so-
15th?
So you can make it whatever, what, the 23rd, is that it? 22nd? Okay, so we're gonna make that on for January 22nd.
So it would be an advertisement for discussion of the regulations for the wetlands bylaw and the stormwater erosion control bylaw.
Correct.
So you're gonna include those, the
Yep.
bylaw revisions and the,
Yeah.
now,
Unless
is
you
this
wanna
has to
hold-
go, are you gonna do any revision to the bylaw? Because
No,
the
no,
warrant for the,
right.
for Springtown meeting closes the 22nd,
I
I
know.
believe.
That's why that's
Okay, so-
why I wanted to make the decision tonight, if we were gonna open up the bylaw or not. I don't think we need to open up the bylaw.
Okay.
I think we can address the regulations regarding,
Will that work with the MS4 permit?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so you're gonna put that on, call for the January 22nd meeting.
If we
Pick
could
a
block off,
time.
if we could block off some time
How
for
about
that.
7 o'clock, where we're fresh? Then,
Fresh.
okay. Where some people are fresh.
Okay, with that, then you'll
7
have
to
people who come in for whatever hearings it would be, that would be, sitting here waiting for the hearing till this discussion get over.
Well,
It's all-
no, well, how long is it gonna take to discuss it? Make it from 7 to 7:15. I don't see this as being rockets.
And if you're
Well, if we
doing that,
discuss the other, changes to the regulations, it'll take a little bit longer, unless you
7
wanna
to
wait
7
those for
7 to 7:30?
for March, unless you wanna wait to March to do the stormwater revisions or,
the other thing is that if you're voting on that, then you have to open it up to anybody in the
yeah,
audience.
it's a public hearing,
It's
yeah.
a public hearing,
7 to 7:30.
so just keep
And
that
we
in
start our
mind.
hearings at 7:30. I just think too often we have these discussions that we are just too tired at this point
No,
in
I
the
agree.
evening to have. And I don't wanna, who knows what kind of pile of hearings we're gonna have for the second week of January. So 7 to 7:30.
Unless you just don't schedule that many for the 15th, for the 22nd, whenever it is, and,
Are you gonna be here on the 15th?
and no. and,
That's what we have to do.
and
yeah.
do it at,
Right.
do it after.
afterwards.
That's the other option. Don't,
Or you guys come in earlier, you come in at 6:30. Or we could wait till March, I don't know.
or we,
March is not gonna be much better. No. March is not gonna be better. What is wrong with 7 to 7:30?
Whatever is the pleasure of the commission.
7 to
It's
7:30.
your bylaw.
Let's,
and
for a
regulation.
change, discuss something that we wanna get straightened
So
out.
you have to advertise it for 7 o'clock.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
all right.
And so the hearings begin at 7:30.
All right, what else did we have here? We did the minutes.
We have enforcement orders.
Enforcement orders. Now that,
What's the discharge?
the Boyden Estates, that was not payment of taxes, right? That those back taxes?
There was something in there that looked like, well, Amy, did you look at it? So,
They're in tax title.
Which means,
he owes taxes to the town of 3,000 something.
yeah, it was like 3,600, so it has nothing to do with the fine. This is a
It's
completely
nothing to do
separate.
with the fine.
So
I
whatever it
didn't know
is, I assume what will happen is that he'll make a filing if it's if he presents the same thing as he did tonight, and there's no change in the opinion of the commission, it would be denied. So he would then take it to DEP and then to the court, is what, my guess is what he is planning to do, which would also apply to the other lot 6. So, he doesn't want to wait till March. What's going to happen if it's appealed?
Yeah, he
don't
wants to
understand.
challenge the bylaw.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
pretty much felt like that for a while.
So,
What got discharged from Diamond Street? What kind of business is that?
Are we on that?
Number
Right.
81 Diamond Street.
It used to be a machine shop.
Right, so 81 Diamond Street, my understanding is he cuts granite, stone there for countertops
Oh,
and had,
Is it just a water jet that he's using to cut it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I do know
No.
that
It's not a water jet.
his water processing that he was using was being directly discharged into the river. Which is a violation of the Wetlands Protection Act, the bylaw, the illicit discharge bylaw. So the assistant building inspector saw it, and I wrote a letter of notice of noncompliance. Said it had to be removed, and the building inspector said it had to be removed, and the health department said it had to be removed, so it was removed.
was it causing sediment right in that area?
Well, what it is, the processed water, when you're cutting these stone slabs, you have the diamond cutter, and you have to keep it cool, so you're
Oh.
pumping water on it, and then you have to get rid of the water, which is containing ground-up stone. And
So there must have been a
that's
lot
no
of
different,
sediment.
that's no different than the sand from the highway washing into the catch basin and going into the stream. Same thing.
Unless they have use any lubricant with it.
It's usually just water.
Yeah.
I've had that problem twice.
No. So that's all taken care of.
That is it.
Okay. We
I don't
issued,
think there was like a huge deposit or anything that needed to be removed. I think it was. That was taken care of.
1900 Main Street, we issued a fine and delivered that,
Yes, we did.
and
Heard nothing from
we
them.
heard nothing back. How did we leave that?
We-
Find them again, or we just are, did we terminate their application?
No.
So that's left open.
That's left open. Right, so when we deliver fines and they're supposed to pay within 21 days, and if they don't pay within 21 days, they have the option of, you know, setting up a court date, which we're notified of, or if they don't pay, we have the option of setting up a court date that they have to come to. Same process that we just went through.
Okay, so the 21 days aren't up, or
The 21 days has definitely been up, yeah.
it is?
Yeah.
So we should
Do you wanna
proceed
pursue
with
that
collecting
avenue?
the fine? Or we want to issue another fine because they still haven't complied?
You tell me what you want to do.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess you ask town council what we do next, because we're not getting any cooperation there, and neither are the selectmen, I guess, because they complied with the selectmen's order.
What was the amount of the fine?
300.
Has there not been a precedent in the past where somebody didn't pay a fine? Did we, how has this been handled before?
We just went, you just saw one, but then he didn't show up for the second court appearance, so the court ruled in our favor, but he has now appealed it. So I don't know which court it goes to. But that's, he has formally appealed the assessment of the fine as determined by the court. I would suggest we consider another fine if they haven't paid haven't paid this fine. Again, the violation is still there, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that we issue another fine for lack of response to the violation, another $300 fine, and until we see what that, and if we don't get something, and also advise town council, just check through Jim, the town council, if they have any other suggestions. If they agree with issuing another fine, and based on what's happened so far, without a response, what do we do next?
I would agree with that.
So someone make that a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 600. Okay. Anything, okay, in this notice of non-compliance with, that's the one that, on Boyden Estates, that's the original one, right? On lot 5?
Well, on the subdivision, on
Subdivision.
1099, yeah.
Okay.
And,
Okay. It's not something new, okay.
no, but on lot 5 is, so he has sold the lot, there's people living there, everything looks like it's been completed, but he hasn't submitted an as-built or a request for certificate of compliance, there's no plaques in place, and there appears to be an overfill. That was another lot where he requested a minor modification to put additional fill in the rear of the yard, and he put, like 99.999% based on looking at the plan and looking at the site, that he overfilled. The fill is right up against the erosion control, while on the modification plan, it's not that far down. So I've asked him to submit an as-built to verify, and he says, no, I have, 3 years. It's do that, but the way the order is written, it's not that you have 3 years. You should request a certificate of compliance upon completion of the project, so.
Okay.
But
When
this,
is the 3 years up?
March, again,
This
March
March?
21st,
Okay,
2020.
so we're, I would say let's go till the March, the 3 years isn't that far away. And then, because he would need to get an extension otherwise, if he doesn't have a certificate of
Or he just does
compliance.
nothing. Or he just
But
does
he
nothing.
needs, since either he has to do a certificate of compliance or request an extension, right?
If he doesn't own it, does he request the extension? He doesn't
Well,
own it
that's-
anymore.
Yeah, he's still the applicant.
Uh-huh.
I've submitted all the enforcement and the and all the documentation to the current owners, and they didn't respond to any of my correspondence either, so.
When property changes hands, the previous owner might have to do things for like a year or two?
The applicant of the order of conditions, yes. We can hold them to comply with
He
the
could
requirements.
transfer that responsibility to the new owner if
He
that's
can.
part of the
Yep.
sale agreement.
That would seem like a normal thing to do.
What about,
Depends what kind of agreement they have.
so the plaques don't have to be in until you do a certificate of compliance? We have nothing that says the plaque should be in during construction anytime, just in order to get a certificate of compliance, you gotta have the plaques in, right? We don't have any time frame on that.
Right, yep.
Okay. Something we might wanna think about, that the plaques ought to go in. But anyhow, that's another subject. Okay, the stuff that is in the wetlands, from the overflow from the retention basin, which was, I think that was cited in the violation notice. So there's stuff there's siltation in the wetlands, right?
There was, there's some sand and material, gravel in the wetlands, not from the basin, but actually from lot 5.
From lot 5, is that what it's from?
And during construction, there was more silty water coming out of the detention basin, but
Okay, so how are we
I don't
gonna
think it's,
clean
that's-
that up? Is that,
well, that's gone. That's silty water in the
no, I mean
the column, and it's
the
gone.
siltation in the wetland.
Well, that's part of the violation.
That's part of this?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
Okay,
That's part of the whole fine
okay,
thing that's
Alright.
ignored.
Okay. Yeah, all right, we need to discuss the Pierce property, so I think we should probably go into executive session. So, you wanna, clock us out?
I think we have to vote to go into executive
we'll
session.
vote.
And
I
then-
move we go into executive session.
Okay,
Second.
okay, and, you have to do it by roll call. Doug?
I couldn't hear you.
Yes, we're going into executive session. You have to vote yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, Emilio? Roger? Yes. Betsy?
Yes.
Al? Jack, yes. Okay.